So, in your continued soccer travels across the state of Texas, you found yourself in Frisco on Wednesday night for the match. And you were texting me missives from the near future at the match. You let me know ahead of
hmm
time about the Zardes goal, and then all of a sudden fracas and more fracas, and all of a sudden Sebastian Driussi's getting a red card that we thought had been assigned to Julio Cascante.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was interesting being in a press box where most of the local press were. I almost came off. They were members of the other team's video review staff,
Mhm.
cheering and hissing, and just it was lively. It was lively. I'll say
Okay.
that. Different in that way, a little bit less buttoned down, very full for a Wednesday midweek game as compared to the rest of the stadium, which was
Mhm.
not very full. My continued travels around the state of Texas over the last couple weeks, having been in post Hurricane Houston at Shell Energy, where it felt very post apocalyptic and lots of lights were still out. It was interesting that the way in which that mirrored Frisco was that for an in state rivalry game, their stadium was surprisingly empty and quiet, and most of their MRGA only showed up later into the game. I had to check a box next to my name to sign in for the driest turkey and pulled pork I've had in a long time. I guess I've denigrated my host as much as I could.
Okay.
Uh,
You can do
but
more,
that
but we'll
aside,
we'll leave it there.
yeah, I'll leave it there. It was a different environment. It was a press box I had not been in yet. And the one in Austin is always a bit chatty, but this one was so chatty and elbow to elbow and packed in like sardines that once the fight broke out, it was difficult to keep track of what was going on and what decisions were being made. And there was a giant TV just directly to my right. So I could reference what was going on the broadcast and turn facing straight out and actually see the field. But it was more difficult than usual to keep track of what was going on. And I think not just because there were a bunch of people there, it was just the nature of it being so elbow to elbow. And don't know how many people were actually actively needing to follow the game as much as were just socializing. So it was tough. And the jubilation after Dallas's first goal, that's going to happen. Sure. Austin scores and it's like nothing happened. It wasn't even like a fart in church. It was refusing to even acknowledge that it had happened. And yeah, it was a different environment to be sure.
Okay. And you did not really go around the concourse then.
No,
You
I missed out on the giant hot dog night, $3 beer night. I did not avail myself of any of these things, either sadly or wisely, because then I had a 3.5 hour drive back as soon as I was done.
because they do have an absurdly large hot dog there, which
Yeah,
I've
and
written about.
do they still have the giant taco that, as somebody who enjoys a Jack in the Box taco now and then, I'm not going to lie,
Mm. Oh,
the theoretical prospect of the state fair style giant taco, in theory, doesn't bother me, but their execution of it, I've seen it in person, haven't consumed it in person, but it leaves something to be desired for somebody who does appreciate good trash food in the right context, in the right way.
I am happy to report that they do. I believe I'm looking. Yes. Okay. Here it is. Fan favorite items returning for the 2024 MLS season. This is from FC Dallas site. It
Oh,
includes famous and scrumptious 1 pound of barbacoa, cheese, lettuce, tomatoes, sour cream, and hot sauce inside a crispy fried flour shell. It is located, of course, at Everything's Bigger in Texas. Parmesan truffle fries. That's very 2007.
okay.
Chicken tenders are a fan favorite.
Uh-huh.
The classic FC Dallas cheeseburger, which is described as griddle grilled beef greatness topped with, and then the various toppings. And then this actually looks good. They have elote. I don't know what Casa M Kickstart seasoning is, but smothered in cotija and chipotle mayo sounds really good. Topped with hot sauce and fresh cilantro. Served with a fresh lime wedge at Tex-Mex Q, which is probably
I
the
grew up
place
in
I would visit.
I
Like
grew
if
up in
I was.
I grew up in Dallas. Many reasons. I'm good living in Central Texas now.
Oh, whoa, whoa,
Uh,
whoa. Hold on. Funnel
Now what?
fries with cherry sauce. Fresh twist on the beloved classic funnel cake. Okay, beloved
I,
arguments there. With fresh fried funnel cake sticks, topped with powdered sugar and sweet cherry dipping sauce.
do I have to go back to eat this crap because I
No,
don't
you
want
do
to?
not.
Good, good. I'm
But
glad
they
to
are fan
know.
favorites. This is what we're
They're
dealing with here.
fan favorites.
All right.
Yeah.
So any kind of insights further from the fracas that we may have missed not being there?
Even with it being as disruptive as it was, I was the one person in the press box who wasn't a member of the Austin FC front office who were tracking things for their own purposes, who was actively trying to figure out, okay, was that a red to Cascante? Yeah, that was a red to Cascante. And it was like, and then Cascante's going off. And there were a couple of guys who were tracking stats. And I was like, yeah, that was a red to Cascante. And he's already off the field. And they're like, which one's Cascante? And I was like, you've got the team lineups right in front of you guys. I'm keeping names away from it, so I don't feel like I'm being too mean. But it was I didn't realize I was taking on double duty going up there, Phil. But that's what I did, which was no. The other thing was we couldn't hear the on-field announcements terribly well. So when the
Oh,
red card against Cascante was rescinded and then issued to Driussi, I was doing my best to lip read and try to use the muffled sound as my guide because the question was, because we could tell that the VAR check was of Driussi specifically, and people were still going, "What is it? What's happening? What's going on?" And I was like, "If you guys would shut up for 2 seconds, maybe we would know." And I said, "Yeah, Cascante, a red card rescinded. It looks like he's coming back on the field. Red card issued to Driussi." And somebody was like, "Was that a second yellow?" And I'm like, "It was a straight red." The yellow card did not come out of the pocket.
this is how
Uh,
soccer works.
this is how soccer works. Are you sure that you're in the right stadium? Are the Rangers playing tonight? Because that's Arlington,
Right.
even though the commentators said that they were coming to everyone from drizzly Arlington. They were, in fact, in the city of Frisco.
Here's one thing I wanted to know. So we saw on the broadcast that Cascante walked off, crossed himself, I guess customarily does that when he comes off the field, I'm assuming. Crossed himself again, probably having a talk with God about the red card. And I didn't do anything. What was that? Why me? That kind of thing. And then prayers answered moments later when he came back on. Who retrieved him? And how did they do that? And I'm wondering what state of undress he was in when
I
he was
mhm.
notified and then had to redress.
I should have sought a comment about this. I gather he had not been out into the tunnel for that long. It looked like it was a pretty short jaunt from where he came off the field to where their tunnel and visiting locker room is, having been down there now. Not a long distance, and he got right off the field. We should probably seek official comment, Phil. I think that would look good on us. So, exactly how naked was Julio Cascante being the question that we want answered. I gather that if he had started undressing, I think that he would have gotten word that there was a review going on because the review happened almost immediately once it actually calmed down. So I have a feeling he probably just stood by in the hallway just in case so that he didn't have to then put his soaked through smock back on.
Emergency podcast. Better did a thing, so we gotta talk about it. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency. Emergency podcast. Shut up, hell yeah, shut up, hell yeah, shut up. Emergency podcast. It's an emergency.
Hey, a hearty hello to you all, and welcome to Emergency Podcast, the Austin FC podcast, where we talk about all the emergencies. We've had quite a dumpster fire of a week. Everything's going to be great, though, tomorrow night in Q2 Stadium when Austin FC faces Charlotte. Osman Bukari is coming to play, we believe. We got him as the player today in the press conference. He's been here for a few weeks, has been prepping. Mikel Dessler has been here not quite as long, but also looks like he might appear. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but we have to talk about some sad things first. We have to talk about two pretty dismal games in which Austin FC head coach Josh Wolff asserts that they played well, but yet the results were less than satisfactory. Moisés Chiullán, you have been all over Texas on behalf of covering these teams and wanted to know how you were and how the interstate traveling has been, or the intrastate
Well,
traveling has been, I should say.
I will say this: the expansion of the Buc-ee's rest stop network has been a very positive thing for having to be on the road to either Dallas or Houston. That's definitely an improvement. I know that I can get a decent pulled pork sandwich after eating terrible pulled pork in either other city. Sorry, I'm going to keep trolling both of those cities
Until the
because I
pulled
don't,
pork improves.
until the pulled pork improves, this shall continue the criticism. Yeah, I've logged a lot of miles, a lot of hours in the car over the last couple weeks, but it's very much been worth it. I think that we're going to be talking about red card troubles. When we recorded last, I mentioned the red card that Anthony De Anda on the second team got. Is there an emotional control issue to be looked at in the high performance of the organization? We're seeing red cards on the first team. We're seeing red cards and yellow card accumulation on the second team, yellow card accumulation on the first team. This is something that we can't help but talk about it because it's happening. And the question is, why is it happening? Is it just something that we can blame on the losses, on being down in the table? Is it notorious hotheads, or is it just the environment? I think there's something to discuss there because you can't help but look at this relative the fact that both of these teams want to be in better shape. The first team, certainly, I think that a lot of times things get tossed around about, oh, do they really want to win? I am very fully convinced that every single player rostered on the first team wants for them to win. I'm glad that Josh Wolff has changed his position from one of the teams had to win to no, we need to win. We need those 3 points.
Mhm.
That is something that I think he has acknowledged without acknowledging it to us directly. He really shouldn't have said that because he can mean it in his nuanced, weirdo way. You and I could talk about it like that. But as the head coach of that team, that doesn't send the right message to his players, doesn't send the right message to the audience
Mhm.
to have said what he said about the Kansas City game.
Yeah,
So
there's been a lot of
yeah.
there's been a lot of talk about the kind of 1 point on the road type of thing, and maybe that not being necessarily the best mindset. And I understand, again, from this kind of pragmatic, cerebral point of view, yeah, I can see it. But at this point, I just want Wolf to go full SEC football coach. We're gonna smash some heads and we're gonna win some games. That kind of demeanor coming into that. And I do wonder, yeah, you're bringing up a good point about the discipline issues, and I'm wondering if maybe part of this is a weird byproduct of trying to avoid that kind of soft mentality thing that they were tagged with earlier in the season. Maybe this is a matter of they're trying to play tough, they're trying to play more physical, even though Wolf has talked about how Seattle was no match for them in terms of just out physicaling Austin in that game. And I wonder if that's maybe to challenge the team a little bit too. It's pretty interesting, but definitely something that has colored the last couple of games. And obviously, going down from 11 to 10 is a tough thing, especially if you are doing that for most of the second half, as they have for those games.
At the same time, they really got that dog in a different way when they went down to 10 men. In many ways, as was noted
Yep.
by you, me, and loads of other people, without Driussi on the field, they transformed. And that's something that could be attributed to things laid out in your very well put together article about what's going on with Driussi. What happened to the playmaker? What's going on? It seems that the ball goes to him to die more often than not. What's going on? Answering the questions of what is going on inside these guys' heads is what we're left to debate because the points just aren't coming. I think that there's a certain amount of Kremlinology that we've got to do in Cold War reporting terms because there are things that we do get to see, and there we get to see the demeanor of players on the field and post match, watching airplane banners fly overhead, which we should also talk about, and figuring out how different people are processing things. We don't get those kinds of direct answers on the post match press conference. As I think it was Eric Goodman who, in particular, brought up the Wolff Out banner and got exactly the dodge that was expected about not addressing it and just moving past it.
That is part of the fan energy that Josh Wolf loves.
He just loves that fan energy, especially when they chant Wolff Out, apparently around members of his family.
That was a
Some
moment.
people,
That was definitely a kind of a inflection point. That's a term I've been using a lot. Just an inflection
Mhm.
point in what's been happening this season and the kind of continued journey, and the big question looming over everything is Josh Wolf going to last until the end of the season?
You look at the conventional standards of world football, and the thing that I have gotten the most tired of saying or hearing, not because I disagree with it or think that it's off base, is I'm just so tired of hearing and saying any other coach in any other league would not have their job anymore. And I'm not saying that from a particular biased perspective on Wolff In or Wolff Out or anything like that. But it's just, I wish I had other things to talk about. I wish I had more context to give than to be going, once again, this is the conversation to have. The more they actually give us something other than pre-manufactured canned answers, the less we have to rely on talking about the stuff that they don't want us to talk about. I assume they don't want us to talk about. The thing for me is, and I have a certain amount of perspective on plans and intentions and things, and I knew about this plane banner before it went up. I knew about it the original time that it was planned to
Me
be
too.
flown. This is something that we both know about, but it's something we consider sourced information. We're not going to report on it, not because, oh, we're part of this sinister cabal that is trying to torch Josh Wolff and, oh, we just can't wait and we pop our popcorn. It's not that. It's we've got to let the story play out. If we intervene, if we are in it and are part of it, then we're making ourselves the story, and that's not what we do. It might be
Right.
what other
Narrative
people
in.
do,
Yep.
not what we
Yep.
do.
Yeah. Yeah. So I do want to, touch on a couple of points there that you talked about. First of all, this kind of idea of it happening in other leagues, but you are seeing it happening in MLS as well. And you've got, I brought this up last week after the Seattle match. You have Berhalter as the U.S. national team coach. You have Luchi Gonzalez at San Jose. You have Nico Estevez at Dallas. All these people who are kind of part of this same coaching network. And those three coaches have all lost their jobs in the past 6 weeks. I didn't know that we were going to get into necessarily Wolff Out things right away, but yeah, again, obviously with the plane flying, with the chant, with the 2 losses, with Austin parked on 30 points, and you see maybe an increased urgency about Wolff talking about needing those 3 points. It's because they really do. If they don't get those, then
Man,
there's a chance to be sliding further into that group of have-nots versus the group of haves that Austin is barely clinging onto at this moment.
you look at the rest of the regular season games that Austin has to play and who they are
And
going
they're
to
not
play
easy.
against. They are not easy games. I'm sorry, but if we're not at 5-alarm fire level, that's where we're at looking at this team. And I should mention that pair of Wolff Out chants that happened late in the game. That was not pre-staged. That was not something that the folks that are driving that movement, that is not something that, at least that I was aware of, and that from, in talking to a couple of them, it seems there was no plan around making
Mhm.
that happen.
Yeah. No, that was organic.
That was organic. It was entirely
They
organic, and it was a moment.
they had a script on a plane banner, which reminded them, hey, maybe this is something we could chant. But it was an organic reaction to what they were seeing on the field and the frustration over, even though there was a push once they went down to 10 in that game, just this kind of sense of recognition that it maybe wasn't going to get done. And again, I think that's got to be a little telling for the players too. And I do want to get into something, one of the sub stories of the week, which we got some additional sort of clarification on today, which was good and helpful. But yeah, just thinking about the players and where their mindsets are, I know that there was a little bit of criticism heaped the crowd's way for maybe that not reflecting necessarily well, not necessarily motivating the players. But I think if there is that kind of level of frustration, and I don't think it's as necessarily on Josh Wolff as a person, but I think it's the kind of idea that what he's trying to get the team to do and how he's trying to connect is continuing to only questionably work. You had 2022, which was the perfect storm of a lot of good things. We've definitely talked about those before. If you are following Austin, you know what those all are. But obviously, 2021, it's an expansion year. It's a weird build. You can forgive that. 2023 and 2024, you have a core of 24 players who were here in 23, who are also here in 2022. Obviously, you do have some kind of moving in and out of the lineup, but in particular, looking at Driussi as somebody who is depended on as the 5th highest paid player in MLS. And then all of a sudden you have this drop off in his production, which, as I talked about in my article earlier this week, seems to continue. That's something that is not just a blip, it's more of a trend. And 2022 is more of the anomaly.
And speaking of 2022, it was him and Hani Mukhtar neck and neck for MVP that year. And Mukhtar has also not had the greatest of seasons.
Right. They're going through some stuff. And they
Yeah,
fired
they're
their coach.
they're going through some stuff. They fire their manager. There are peaks and valleys, and people want to draw correlations to things, and sometimes that's us. But I think it bears mentioning that this is not the only club that is going through some weird stuff. If you had told people around this time last year that the LA Galaxy would be on a pretty solid run of form, I don't know that a ton of people would actually believe you. One season to the next, one game to the next, things can change crazily, but looking at where things are, you can't help but look at that hill that has to be climbed with all of these myriad issues going on. And the thing that I think can get overshadowed in looking at the binary of Wolff out versus Wolff in, what side are you on, taking the tone of partisan politics, I think it is also, it bears mentioning that plane banner flying, the chance organically happened later in the day from the most recent attempt of an assassination on a former president of the United States, which is definitely something that's affected my mood. I don't know about yours, Phil. I don't know that I can speak for the rest of the world, but it sure seems like the rest of the country is in a weird place from the effects of that. So there are a lot of high emotions because of what's happening on the pitch and because of what's happening out in the real world. Like football is a lot of people's escape from all of that stuff, but that doesn't mean that we don't take it into the stadium with us too.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, maybe less of a thing for the players, many of whom are internationals and aren't as directly keyed into U.S. politics as a lot of us are. But without having the sort of environment where asking the players, what did seeing that banner pre-match during warmups do for your mood? What did you think of it? Because we assume that they're just not going to want to answer or say, no, I didn't see it and lie, which we know that players saw it. We saw them looking at it. Um, we are only able to speculate because we don't even have a canned answer filtered through their PR staff to go off of. We can only speculate as to they are probably not in the best of moods and they're getting red cards and yellow cards left and right. So it seems like they're acting out a bit and they are not in the best of headspaces. But that's all that we can really definitively say. And there are some folks who on social media in various conversations that we've both been aware of have said, oh, the players saw it and oh no, it affected the players. And I don't think seeing a banner flying over the stadium is something that tanked the entire Seattle game and is the reason that they lost that game. They lost that game because they lost that game.
Mhm.
Did it affect them emotionally? Probably did. I think that's a reasonable thing to say. How much it affected them? I think it's difficult to measure that kind of thing. Like that's a
Yeah.
new stat that I don't think we have a number for.
Yeah, they lost that game because they didn't have an answer for Jordan Morris when he got subbed on in the second half. That's the fundamental thing that happened. But yeah, I obviously, and then you get the answer from Wolff. Wolff is the one that's asked about it directly because obviously he is the target of that message. And his answer was just a non-answer. He just ignored that. He talks about the fans and enjoying the fan energy and the passion that they bring, but that's a passion that says we don't want you to be part of this, which is very different from the kind of normal fan passion that he talks about. Also, one note on the Trump thing and the weirdness of that day. I am going to say that the last 30 days have been a hell of a news year.
Yeah, sure.
And I really want
Quite the
off this
decade,
train.
really. Quite the decade.
Yeah, I want off this train. We still have 4 more months until this election, and God knows what's going to happen after, because we know from last time that it's not. Oh, yeah, things are settled. I'm going to gracefully
walk in the
bow
park.
out. Let's have the January 6th validation of the votes in Congress be a formality. And
Yeah.
anyway, so we got to talk about Alex Ring.
In talking about Alex Ring, can I start the timeline a bit further back than you may assume?
Yeah, sure.
Let's jump back to NYCFC game. Ring and Valencia both come out. They don't generally come out unless hurt, as Josh said to us in the post-match press conference. They were visibly limping. They were, they took some knocks. The question was, oh, is this a serious injury? Is this going to take them out, make them questionable for the next game? No. In the midweek presser following that, it looks like they will play. We're keeping an eye on it. Okay. One of the first things that I noticed in the locker room after the Seattle game was that Alex Ring was visibly limping after having been worked on by the physios. He was one of the last people to leave, which is why he was still in there by the time you got in there from the post-match press conference. And if I can, you good with me rattling on with the timeline of
Yeah.
things? I feel like I'm
Yeah.
talking about the Kennedy assassination or something.
And I do want to, I do want to say that just as a general note, Ring has been one of the last to leave the locker room because that's just what he's been doing this year. And hence he's been accessible, and he has, unlike last year, been really willing to talk to media and share his thoughts. And he's, as you can surmise, pretty much of a straight shooter, right? Is gonna say what's on his mind. He'll have moments where he is perhaps a little bit more careful, but certainly if he thinks the team did well, he's going to say so. If the team did poorly, he's going to say so. And I think it was earlier in the year where it was a foul that led to a PK. I'm trying to remember, just from talking to him, I remember him putting his hand up for that one. So I don't remember the game exactly, but I do remember that. Yeah. Oh, cool. Moment of accountability from Ring. That's good to see.
And there's a certain amount that, like, I think this is entirely speculative, but informed speculation. I don't blame him not wanting to talk to the press last season after losing the armband. For whatever reasons there were attached to that, I also understand the coach being reluctant to talk about it, other players being reluctant to talk about it, but Alex Ring in particular, whatever it was that happened, whatever it was that led to that, that is his choice to make. If he doesn't want to talk to people about it, he doesn't want to talk to people about it.
Right. And last year was more of a curated experience too for media. Like this year,
Very much.
Austin's doing what the league protocol is in terms of locker room access with players and all that. Last year, it was something where they wanted to curate it more and create that separation. But in doing so, they were able to basically keep him from the press because we would request him, and it eventually became a joke where Cam would ask us what players we wanted. I would say Ring. Everybody would chortle because we knew that Ring would not be
It was
talking.
just not going to happen.
But this year, it's something has definitely changed, like for the better. Like the relationship seems better. His willingness to talk to media has been, a 180, because last year he didn't do it. This year he's doing it.
And I feel, as you say, he's a straight shooter. He is the kind of guy who, as much speculation as there is about, Ring must constantly be at odds with Wolff, and there must be like these screaming matches constantly happening this season that we just don't see. If that were happening, I don't see Ring playing. I don't see him being willing to talk to the press at all. Does he talk to the press as much as like an Ethan Finley or a Brad Stuver does? Not quite, but he doesn't just jet the moment he sees us in the locker room like a lot of the other players do, to be honest. If he is not like ready to go out the door, and even if he is ready to go out the door, if he is approached in the locker room, he has been like, yeah, sure. And after a loss, it'll be, and don't worry too much about the Apple Podcast labels. I'll say, Phil, right before I say this, he'll say something like, basically what happened is we played like shit. And that's what happened tonight. Right. He's that straight up about it. And one of the things that I love about him.
He is Mina from Veep, but can play D-mid.
Exactly. So after the Seattle game, he's visibly limping, and that's after being worked on. And I pick up on that. Didn't have necessarily any reason to make it headline news or something, but there are things like that we note, that we pick up on, that aren't immediately something to throw out there because it may not be that significant, because it may be part of a narrative in the health of a given player and why different decisions are made. He does a video interview with Laura Gallo. He talks to you a little bit, and he gets out.
Right. Yeah, and I talked to him first, and I asked him some questions, and I was there for Laura's part of it, but that was the article. That was again, I usually do the article with all the quotes and all that on the Sunday morning after. So if you look at Verde All Day, it's that one. And asked him a little bit about, obviously, the performance and the disappointment there, but the thoughts about Bukari coming and how that was going to maybe help the team. And he talked about not wanting to put pressure on one player, and then just asked if there were things that he had seen in practice. And he's, I've only trained with him once, which I thought was pretty funny. And I included that in the article. Because again, it's funny, it's droll, but at the same time, it is highlighting this reality of he's still pretty new to the training process in 11v11s and getting that chemistry. We heard some encouraging things from Josh about that today, and he sounded great in terms of kind of his mindset and where he was. So that's all encouraging. But at that point, before that week of practice, that's where things were. And it was like, great, okay, this is useful information that I can put in my article. And then Laura's questions were, again, just trying to get more of an assessment about where things were. And Do you want to take it from here in terms of
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
relaying the
Laura's
quote that I
questions.
think people know about?
Yeah, Laura's questions were totally reasonable and above board. And as she said in We're Austin's Twitter space following the Dallas game, she did not edit or juice up anything. She posted it completely raw, the way that the way that it rolled out. And in the course of that, she asked him a question about, what he thought the roster plans were going to be for the Wednesday game against Dallas. And Alex's response, and I'm not exactly quoting here because I don't have it in front of me, but the context of it being that she was asking him a question about team roster tactics. That was the question that was being asked. His response was, well, you would have to ask for the coach. He makes the decisions. In our estimation of this, you and I both hearing this was not breaking news. To Laura's ears, this was not breaking news. To Hernan and We Are Austin, who excerpted that quote and posted it while juggling having a newborn and work and a life outside of the does not pay incredibly well world of running an independent media operation. Also, did not clock that as some, oh my God, here is the proof that Wolff has lost the locker room. Alex Ring will not talk about
Right.
a decision that is not his to make. Oh
Yeah,
my God.
and we got to talk to him today after practice and confirm what we had thought, that basically he was just talking about tactics there, and that's something that we had understood. That's what his intention was. That's how I saw it, and it was
Yeah.
so unremarkable to me from my ears that I didn't even include it as part of what I do, because I do try to put a lot of quotes in there, but I try to not have it be a massive tome. Right, I realize that
Yeah.
Sunday morning people are recovering from a loss. They want to have the key quotes. They want to have that kind of information that helps them process what's happened on the field and kind of move on with hope or despair or whatever else they want to have into the next match. But yeah, it to me, it didn't seem like it was remarkable. But for people looking for subtext and they're trying to find these clues about
Hmm.
where the locker room might be, where coaches might be with players, where players might be with coaches, I totally understand reading into that quote and saying, oh, what does that mean? Especially, again, one of the running storylines of
If
the year has been that there's been this question about Wolff accountability. Is he taking blame for what's going on? Is there any time where he's going to say, yes, this is on me? And he hasn't really done that this season. He's either said after the Orlando loss, we share in the blame, which is as far as it's gotten. And in other times, he's talking about final third decision making and execution. So it's something that's squarely on the players. So with the kind of combination of continued questions about Wolff and how he's doing and how he's performing, and then in press conferences, this kind of idea of why aren't they executing the fantastic plans that I have,
yeah.
then that's gonna, if you're looking for a narrative where the players are being wronged by Wolff's decision and they're being done some sort of disservice, then a quote like that feeds right into that, even though it's said very dry and matter of fact, and essentially Ring saying, I'm not going to worry about that. I think his mindset is, if I get called to start, I'm going to start. If I come in off the bench, I'm going to come in off the bench, and I'm going to, run my butt off for however
Hmm.
many minutes it is that I'm asked to play.
And that answer, to me, it was no different than when we ask about roster move decisions to Josh, and he says, that's a roto question.
Mhm.
It's literally the same thing. It is the exact same kind of answer of, sorry, but I got nothing for you. It's not my job. Talk to the guy whose job it is. And I feel like for folks who are listening to this, you just dropped a piece of information. And this episode is very much all about how context is king. So the context of us talking to Ring after the Friday instead of Thursday press conference does bear mentioning before people spin out conspiracies of the deep state of the club and this, that, or whatever. I feel like for those who aren't necessarily familiar with the following series of events, as this kind of spread around like wildfire among the fan base, because as we talked about earlier, when you starve the fan base for that context, they create their own. When there's not a new Star Wars movie for well over a decade, guess what the fans are going to do? They're going to write their own fan fiction and they're
Mhm.
going to retake ownership of the Star Wars. And sorry, you're not giving them the Star Wars. What do you expect them to do? What do you expect them to do? So this context gets out there. It's jumping all over social media. And another thing that the fan base makes hay of is, oh, Josh says that he doesn't pay attention to social media, but then he says, oh, I heard that there was this thing on social media. What's Josh's burner account on Instagram and Twitter? The club keeps him apprised of. This is what the dialogue is. This is what is prominent out there. He's kept apprised of that stuff. And I really do not think that guy wants to go into the depths of the comment section of a post that is uniformly Wolff Out. It's like people assuming that actors see every social media post or every review of a movie, or like directors or whatever in Hollywood, having worked in entertainment. I know that there are exceptions to that. But most of them are like Adam Sandler, who doesn't read anything, and it's better for his mental health. And so these players will get family members, they will get their spouses, they will get friends going, hey, did you see this post about you? Blah, 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 blah. That's most of how they get that stuff. Josh, I feel like, mostly relies on what is filtered to him by the club's comm staff.
Mhm.
Not just because that's what Josh has said, but because, when we will give him a peek behind the curtain at things, usually this is the funny thing of the week, or this is what people are pointing out. 90s fashion is back, only the worst parts of 90s fashion, that kind of thing. He'll have a chuckle, and he has a lot more things to worry about and isn't really interested in that kind of thing. I don't think that is a front for
Mhm.
Josh is constantly on Reddit, commenting under a burner. So when it came to Ring, in between that and
I'm just imagining Josh Wolff on Austin FC Reddit.
oh God, him constantly going, Owen, get in here. How does this thing work again? How do I give gold? Does that mean I pay for that? Why does my avatar have a mohawk now? Okay. Well, all
I
right.
didn't mean to
Okay.
upvote this. Could I de-upvote it?
If I downvote it, does that mean that I changed my mind? I don't think that's happening. I think Josh in particular has much more of a filter on that than any of the players do. The players, some of them have, family members manage their social media for them, spouses. Some of them might use one of various agencies that do that kind of thing. It's possible.
Mhm.
There you go. There's your conspiracy for the day. Which Austin FC players use PR management firms to run their social media for them? There you go. Chew on that one. There's a bone. There's a bone,
Yeah.
anti-Wolves.
I think if there is something that's really bad, sometimes that will circulate to players. But
Yeah.
I think most of what, I am reasonably sure that Austin FC players are not reading my fair measured stat-filled coverage of the team.
Yeah.
And that's fine. That's okay.
Yeah. So that thing had the life that it did on social media. When it came to the Dallas match, again, think back to a couple tangents ago when I brought up the knock that he and Valencia took at the NYC game. He and Valencia are on the bench for this Wednesday match. Then the speculation goes further, and before the roster came out, the speculation was, oh boy, Ring's going to get reprimanded for this. He's going to get rapped on the knuckles with the ruler by Father Wolff. Oh, he's speaking truth to power, and he's going to get reprimanded for it. And then when the roster came out and he was on the bench with Valencia, because he has a minor injury that he is trying to not re-aggravate in a period where he's got 3 games in 8 days.
Yes, 3 games in 8 days. There's that too. Yeah.
The speculation went to, oh man, look, it's Wolff punishing him. When to me, like, anybody who knows me personally, I am not going out on a limb defending Josh Wolff about anything when it comes to the tactics and play of the team. To me, this was very different than the full rotation of 2021. This was let's not aggravate Valencia and Ring's injuries to where they have to sit out of games injuries, and we actually have them available for the Saturday game. Not being able to predict that you've got Julio out on yellow card accumulation, Driussi out on a red card for a Saturday game when you're going to be thin. Especially then, as the roster has been thin all season. I saw that very plainly on its face as them making the reasonable decision to make sure that they do not blow the tires off of Ring or Valencia. See, I
Right.
was doing culinary metaphors and now I'm on F1. But that to me was the way that I had read that whole thing leading up to the game.
And then, as we found out today, Ring is actually going to be captain tomorrow, which again is further evidence about Ring and where he's at vis-a-vis Wolff. And then it's a good thing, obviously, that again he has served as vice captain all year. We found out also that basically Wolff had said that when Driussi's not captain for whatever reason, if he's injured or something else is going on that keeps him out of game, like a red card, then Ring is the person who's plugged in as captain, as first choice from there, and is part of the leadership council and all that.
To do a lousy impersonation of a terrible person. What's happening here is the deep state at Austin FC is trying to make sure that we keep our eye on, everything's fine between Wolff and Ring. And what's really happening is a midnight fight club where they all rip off their shirts and make each other bleed. Why do you never see Josh outside of a shirt? It's because he's covered in scars from the knife fights that happen in the bowels of Q2 Stadium after a game. Yeah, like you could go that far that this is just for appearance and it's them trying to cover their asses. But it seems like an extraordinary amount of effort that on its face doesn't look terribly convincing. But again, consider the state of US politics and everything happening in the world. And when you starve people of context, they are going to create their own. So all of this leads into the game. Game in Dallas doesn't go well. I'm down in the tunnel with my man Richie, who does Otra Por Favor, and Duke, king of videographers, and we are trying to get player comment as you are doing the post-game press conference over Zoom. They ended up having Gyasi Zardes talk to the press. Always a good guy to talk to us, not because, he's good at hiding the hidden deep state Austin secrets, but because he's good and he's forthcoming and he's a good guy and he's a veteran leader who knows how to talk and knows how to represent his teammates. And person after person, Driussi was the first one, had a guy with him, and we were not brought further down the tunnel next to the exit door until after he had been given his Chick-fil-A chicken sandwich, which that's a whole other thing that I'll get into later. And they shuffle him off, player after player. Yeah. Don't even look our way.
Not shocking that Driussi
not
doesn't talk
shocking
to media
at all.
Yeah.
Not shocking at all. He screwed up, and I think he was very well aware of it. And if the man is not in the mood to talk to the couple of us that were there, then maybe he is making the better emotional regulation choice that he could have made during the game by opting not to speak to us. Leo Väisänen,
not that many people.
Yeah,
not that many people talk to you at all.
No, it was literally Leo Väisänen, and then Ring and Danny came out. And Richie said, "Hey, Alex, Danny, would you talk to us for just a minute?" We came out, and I said, "Yeah." And Danny turned as if he was going to come over and talk to us, and Ring, exact words, said, "Hey, you guys fucked me over last time. I'm good." And just kept walking. And did it hurt my feelings? No. Did it surprise me terribly on the other side of that game? No. Did that itself then invite the question of, wait a minute, is there some validity to this? Did Ring get benched? Did he get reprimanded? Did he get in trouble because he screwed up with the press? We didn't have any context. So I debated this with you. I was like, I don't know. That's what he said. When and in what context do I post about this? And as we got off the phone, as I was about to leave the parking lot at Frisco, I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to post it.
Yeah.
And I did, threw it out on Twitter, and it caught on pretty quickly.
Yeah. I would have let it marinate, but then once you post, but it's part of the narrative. I think to me, it's really about just a level of frustration that it's not necessarily, let's start a thing with like Ring versus the press. Cause again, like he's been good and we had to talk Friday today and clear the air there. And I think things are good. And I think he's gonna talk to us again. I think it was a bad loss. Nobody felt good about that. Obviously it's 2-1 that you think you save a PK. Turns out you don't save a PK. Then obviously the retake gets made. There's the fight, there's the taunting, just all sorts of ridiculous from Dallas. And then you're pushing, you're fighting, you're trying to get the equalizer. You're looking a little bit more spry. And then all of a sudden there's a counter and game over.
And again, context. What contributed to my decision to go ahead and tweet that while the We Are Austin Twitter space was going on was that as closed off as this club has been in the past and to now, which I'm sure they're not thrilled about hearing me say because they've told me as much, um, not having more context to go off of, the way something like that comes off is that the media is being treated like an opposing team. Like that is how it comes off. Did I assume in the moment that Ring probably immediately regretted doing that? And as I found out this morning, did immediately regret. And as I was about to reach out, he had reached out to their comm staff and said, if any of those guys that were there tonight are going to be there on Friday morning, I want to apologize for that outburst because that was not the right way to handle what I was feeling. And
yeah, which is cool because you don't have to do that. And that's
it.
the thing. If you have a bad game and you don't want to talk to media, I understand that.
Me too.
If it's an occasional thing and it's no, I gotta really like for my own emotional well-being, pass this off to somebody else. Yeah, I absolutely understand it. If you don't talk to media week after week, then that's a problem. Especially if you are a player that you expect more accountability out of based on status, based on talent, based on how much you're being paid, based on how you figure in as a leader at the club, then yeah, it's concerning. So,
and
but
for me, it's also about building trust.
Mhm.
I completely understand. I am still very relatively new to a lot of these guys, even though I've been covering the club for about a year now. Some of them know me better than others. Some of the newer guys, I am one of the most regular faces that they see when it comes to media availability and post game stuff and everything. And there are various of these players that, in the context of playing for Austin, have been burned by members of the Austin media corps who will go nameless, but some of you probably know who I'm talking about in a couple of cases.
You know exactly who.
Yeah, you know exactly who. In one case that I've defended and advocated for, bizarrely enough, wonderful way to pay that back. Sorry, that wasn't a dig. No, it was a dig. To your point, I think it is completely reasonable for any of them to say that they don't feel like talking to press after a game because these guys have emotional and psychiatric health to watch out for just as much as their ankles and legs and rotator cuffs and that kind of thing.
Right.
Totally get it. And to their credit, they are letting us into the locker room, and the players did not. I'm sure there's some of them who aren't thrilled about having press in the locker room post match, but if they were really thoroughly against it, we wouldn't be in there. They would have put their foot down. But a part of us being in there and them not being super thrilled about it is them getting used to the fact that there is a process that the front office goes through to make sure that those of us that have that access are not going to abuse it when it comes to their emotional and psychiatric health of just shoving in their faces. So tough loss. What does it feel like to suck? You're basically the worst defensive midfielder in MLS. Any comment on that? We're not asking stuff like that. And the more they're interfacing with us, the more comfortable they are with that. And one additional point on this is that I feel like what those players need and what the fan base needs is a kind of contact that we've seen at the second team games that we have not seen as profoundly or as across the board in the first team games. And that is the players interacting with the crowd, not just hyping them up with their hands when they come on the field like CJ Fodre, but the kind of appreciation that you see other clubs, coaches mandate from their players. Do I hold this against Josh Wolff? I'm going to let other people put those words in my mouth rather than say them. I asked Josh in one of those post-game pressers about CJ came on, hyped up the crowd, and is that something that he encourages his players to do? Is that something he thinks the players should do to take advantage of the fans that he tells us so often that they love so much, especially when they are chanting for him to be fired, apparently? And I just got this sideways dodge. And I think there is an anxiety from him and anxiety from some of the players. I think most of what contributes to the players not coming over after the match, based on something Brad said to me on Wednesday night, is different guys deal with the end of a game, especially a loss, very differently. At home matches, some of them have little kids. They got family to corral. They got stuff to deal with there. A lot of weird things can happen after a match. But if there is one biggest note, it is that those players need to, in a more concerted way, I don't care when it happens. What they need to do to harness that love and affection from the fan base better is go see him, man. Just go see him. I don't know why they should be afraid to. All CJ has to do is wave his arms in the air and the crowd responds. Same thing Moxie Rudy did. Like the evidence is there, and being so afraid to pull the curtain back a little bit is something that they've just got to get past, especially when they are in this big of a rut.
Yeah, exactly. So if you have a baby, you know that they will hold babies. So
They will hold babies, probably
that.
sign babies. Who knows?
Yeah, just one more thing on this. We went a little bit longer on this than we went, but again, part of this is just peeling back the curtain on just what all can happen with players and the coach and the media and all that. For us, yeah, it's a relationship building, and it's not, oh, we're becoming better friends, but it's more we're trying to understand each other better, and we're trying to understand motivations and where people are coming from and what it is that we're trying to do. And from our part, we are into storytelling. We are into the narrative. We're into trying to capture things and be as fair as possible. And I wouldn't say objective, because obviously there is a subjectivity to this, right? These are good people that we have gotten to come to know, and we want to see them do well. And that doesn't mean necessarily that I'm going to be head to toe in Verde gear walking into the stadium and into the press box and startling everybody, but definitely when this team did well in 2022, it was a lot of fun to cover. And certainly being part of this media community and being part of this greater Austin FC community, yeah, I've gotten to the point in the age and the arsenalization of my fandom where I try to not let individual wins and losses color my mood so much. But yeah, certainly it's a journey that you walk through, and there is emotion that's involved because it is a very at its core emotional sport.
I think there's something interesting there where it's something I've noticed. You talk about wins and losses not coloring you. My unique perspective that I get on you, Phil, is the entertainment that I get when there is not that much entertainment is when you are just tired of having to write the same story. That's what you're angrier about. It's not the loss. It's not the this. It's not the that. It's the
It's this loss again.
oh, it's this loss again. I remember the flavor of this one, soupçon of bitter apple. I recall this flavor. Can we please get back to the non-rotting stuff that hasn't fallen off the tree yet? Yeah, I from this point, and we originally planned on trying to talk more about Bukari and Dessler, but I
Right.
don't know that we're still going to do that. But I feel like us digging in on this stuff is something that this is the moment. This is where we're at. And there's only a certain amount that we can get into about what I guess you would consider the regular reporting style of things. Had things not continued to be so dire and weird this season, not just on the point sheet, but from a vibes perspective, where
Right.
everything is in a defensive stance, everything is shut off and protective. And it's the times that Josh has been most interesting to me in press conferences of any kind has been when he just is a bit of a dork, is a bit of a wonk, is a bit of a weirdo, and acts like a human being and doesn't say the fans, we love the fans, and it's only because of the fans. Josh, if you keep repeating the same thing about the fans, you know what the fans are going to assume? That you don't actually feel like that about the fans.
Mhm.
Pick
Yeah, I
some
mean,
new
today
lines.
we were talking about tattoos to start things
We're
off.
talking
And
about tattoos. We're talking about frosted tips. Are frosted tips coming back?
yeah, learned that Corey
Uh,
Mose got a tattoo in Mexico one time,
look,
just on a lark.
you're airing the man out here. You leave Corey Mose alone. We're here to attack players and the coach. Only that.
We're
That's the
not here
only
to
thing we're here to
celebrate.
do. We're not here to
Yeah.
celebrate or have
Impulse
fun.
tattoos. Yeah. So yeah, that's so funny. I just finished telling Josh, yeah, you don't really want to get an impulse tattoo. And then Corey's, oh, I did. So
Hey,
anyway,
look,
so
Corey's lived a life. Shout out to Corey. We got to get Corey on here at some point.
we do. We really do. All right. So let's go ahead and we're going to infuse some hope. We had some more analysis of Seattle and Dallas that we were going to do, but we're not going to do that because we have talked enough and people are hurting. And there's one more match before Leagues Cup, which is a
Mhm.
whole different animal. We're going to talk about that next week. But we want to obviously get to this game because this is a game that we've circled on our calendars for a while. It's the first game after summer transfer window starts. We have the possibility of seeing Bukari and Dessler tomorrow. Svatok, we learned, is probably about days from getting into the US. Maybe he'll get some little run outs towards the end of a deep Leagues Cup run, but I don't think there's going to be a deep Leagues Cup run. More on that next
Yeah.
week. So we'll probably see him once they make the turn out of Leagues Cup back into the regular season. But yeah, I just want to get kind of your thoughts about Bukari and Wolff's kind of reflections on him and what he can do. And again, just this idea of he's got playmaking ability, he's got scoring ability, he's got this blinding speed, and obviously it's going to be still a work in progress to see how he jives with the other players.
Yeah.
And again, especially part of what the delicious delight of Saturday was going to be was, oh, how is Bukari and Driussi going to connect and what are we going to see there? But I think we are going to still see some of that with some of the other players, even though we're not going to see the one connection that really especially made the signing make sense when they did it.
Phil, I was really hoping to discuss the unique chemistry of working Dessler in the back with Cascante, but I also can't have that conversation. So, and last week we talked about Josh's positive response and everything, and everybody's very excited. Everybody's very excited. That's how everybody's felt since he got signed. I think the thing that we could mention is that you mentioned the possibility of seeing Bukari and Dessler. Josh said it, so it's on him to make himself a liar. He said that Bukari and Dessler are both going to play with certainty. Yeah. How much they're going to play, he wouldn't commit to. Will either or both of them start? Wouldn't commit to. But both of them will see the field at Q2 against Charlotte tomorrow.
They said both are available, and then he said we'll see. Did you hear less equivocation in that?
I heard certainty that they will play. And he rolled out of that into talking about how we're also down a couple of guys, so we need to play them. So it was really much couched in the whether that was the plan originally or not, they don't really have a choice other than to go ahead and get them out there. And a thing that got snuck in there later on when I asked about Austin FC2 players, which is my regular question that I will bring up because either I'll get or these guys, they're talented, blah, blah, blah. And I got a part of that in the response from Josh. Sounds like we're going to get some Austin FC2 players during Leagues Cup.
Yep. They get to expand the roster, I believe, for that. So I think what that means is, yeah, we're probably not going to take a hard run at Monterrey and Pumas as part of what that's indicating to me, but also that it's a chance to get some of those players some experience. And who knows how Monterrey and Pumas is going to treat that as well. If they feel like it's a fairly easy game, we might get some triple digit Monterrey and Puma players. One of my favorite things about Liga MX are the triple digit players, by the way.
One of my favorite things is going to be Alonso Ramirez going to get to play against Pumas and Monterrey? Giassi had very positive things. He was like, he slotted right in. It was like he was always on the first team.
Yeah.
He's been impressive. He's shown out and shown up, and letting a Mexican player get to play for his club team against two of the big dogs of Liga MX. It's like that to me, as fraught as many things surrounding Leagues Cup are, and God, that could be another 7 hours just talking about Leagues Cup stuff. But I'll leave it concise as I love that could be part of the narrative of however short of a Leagues Cup run Austin has. Austin absolutely shocks everybody against Pumas and Monterrey. That's a whole other story. And that's, that's what we get to fill your podcast ears about next week. But when it comes to this weekend, this game against Charlotte, I think that the first answers we get about what to expect is when that roster drops. And if either or both of those guys are on it starting. Because sometimes they're cagey because they're doing the 5-dimensional chess. They don't want their opponents to go in assuming that they're going to have Dessler starting. They want to know that the opponent is going, well, they say that Dessler isn't ready, so we should expect Gallagher 100%. So let's prepare to manhandle Gallagher. And then if all of a sudden when the team sheet drops and they spring Dessler on them, that does make Charlotte have to reformulate, recalculate what they were planning to do. So there is some of that kind of stuff that could be part of this. We literally won't know until we see the team sheet.
Right. And again, that's part of the suspense and all that. And we got an indication from what we heard from Josh is that he didn't entirely know, right? So again, this is like a third game in 8 matches. Obviously, the 2 suspensions has done kind of a number on the roster creation. He did mention CJ again as somebody who continues to get minutes and all that. Certainly, I think we'll see him. There's little clues here and there. But
he also did not discount the notion of playing a 4-4-2.
Which was fun.
And
Because I asked
I
about
was
Rubio and
shocked.
Zardes together, and I
Yeah.
thought, okay, that's going to be Rubio and Dreezy slot at the 10, the nominal 10. And yeah, all of a sudden he broke out with 4-4-2. And I know that with Mike LaHood on the Suffering from Joy interview that they did from their spaces, he was talking about the idea of two strikers and two strikers being something really interesting in MLS, thinking about Bukari as one of those strikers. But yeah, we got probably like a few minutes here left before we've reached the saturation point. So I just wanted to get kind of your thoughts about Bukari and what you saw from today. For me, I saw someone who was incredibly soft spoken. Again, hard to hear, not as hard to hear as in the Continental Club, but still had to lean in and fringe on his personal space, though not to the degree that we had before. He did have a phrase about goals and assists and doing some magic things, which I thought was really fun. But someone who just seems like he's really quiet and studious about the game. And I think it's someone who, even more so than Drew, is somebody who is going to let his game do the talking and won't necessarily have big exultations unless he's mocking Cristiano Ronaldo in a goal celebration.
I think you nailed it, man. That's my read. That's he's a little reserved. He's a little cautious in talking and that kind of thing. He
Mhm.
plays soccer. He's not a professional orator. He knows that, but he talks well. Seems pretty well adjusted. I am looking forward to seeing how he handles feeding off of the energy in that stadium. That's
Mhm.
what I'm most interested in seeing
Right. Yeah.
is having seen what we've seen in Champions League and the World Cup, how he translates the vibes of Q2 into the plays he says he wants to make.
Right.
That's what I'm excited about, and I'm excited about Dessler surprising people
Yeah.
and shutting people down and doing a solid job.
Yeah, I think Dessler's going to be fantastic. Yeah, with Bukari, I now believe when he said that he was just caught up in the moment and that he wasn't really mocking Cristiano Ronaldo. He doesn't seem like he's got the kind of countenance where he's going to
Yeah.
mock somebody in celebration.
When you've got a player like CR7 who is so notoriously full of himself and a jackass on the field, sometimes you get the quiet guy inspired to action by being that big of a jerk.
Mhm. Right. Yeah, that's a good thing to attribute it to. We did talk about jollof rice as well, and
Yeah.
he apparently had found some. There's a Nigerian place. I looked it up after practice. I almost did some research and went there. Not this time though, but I'll
Look,
do it another
hey,
time.
hey, you have dinner plans? Because I've never been there. I've known that it exists, and I feel like okay, this is the most important thing that I can do for the fan base. You got to get into jollof rice, everybody.
Mhm.
If you've never had it, if this is your first hearing about it, because we saw a Ghanaian player signed by Austin, guess what? Your world is going to change. Jollof rice is something that has influenced the cuisines of Cajun New Orleans food, Caribbean food. That is one of the great things that the West was blessed with by the tragedies of the Middle Passage. Now, here's the thing about jollof rice is there's not just like one jollof rice. There's the Ghanaian jollof rice, there's the Senegalese, there's the Nigerian. And his response about having gone to try it was, "Oh, it was good, but it wasn't the same." The Nigerian is not the same as the Ghanaian. It's not the same thing. There's subtle differences, and even like that restaurant, there are probably ingredient substitutions that have to be made
Right, sure.
because look, there are just differences in what's available. Um, but I thought it was great that we checked all the boxes. We covered jollof rice. We covered how excited he is to be here, how he's feeling working in. I feel like he's going to fit in well because there are other softer spoken guys. Obrian is a softer spoken guy. You get him a little jacked on the field. He gets a little spicy sometimes, but he's very soft spoken. You very much have to lean in talking to him. Vicenen, same way.
Yep, yep.
There that is a dynamic, and I think he fits into those ranks of guys who, let their play speak for itself.
Yep. So, going to be exciting to watch him. And then obviously the Leagues Cup madness. So, Leagues Cup is going to be starting next Friday, and we'll cover that next week because I don't even want to think about that right now, even though I did enjoy last year's immensely, but just the timing and kind of where things are and some of the injuries that has already happened. Those are,
Hmm.
it's going to be, yeah, obviously the kind of big headliney Texas thing was going to be Tigres versus Lionel Messi's Miami on August 3rd in Houston. Given the size of that ankle in the Copa America final, I'm not quite sure that we are going to see Messi in that game, which is, again, a little bit of a drag because that was going to be something kind of special.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, Phil, quick cut to more Messi commercials. We got to cover the fact that he's not on the field. We need him selling more potato chips and insurance and home improvement needs.
Yeah, there's some really bad Messi commercials out there right now. So I'm
look,
okay with the
I've
Home Depot
seen
one.
worse. It was Lowe's. Thank you. It was Lowe's.
Lowe's, right.
This episode brought to you by Lowe's. Lowe's, jollof rice. But yeah, a week from today, as we record this, ATX versus Pumas, and then the Tuesday game against Monterrey, and then Monterrey play Pumas on August 3rd on a Saturday night, a civilized time to have a soccer match on August 3rd.
Same night as that
Yeah,
Tigres Miami match, though.
So yeah, now that Monterrey Pumas game might end up being the centerpiece game of the weekend because
Sure.
it's Monterrey Pumas.
Yep. That's pretty good. And that might actually decide some things too, right? So by that point, Austin could be eliminated and you could be trying to figure out from Monterrey Pumas who's getting first place. I believe Monterrey, I think it's up until the quarterfinals that they get to use Q2 as their home stadium.
I think that is the way that
it's either
supposed to
round
work
of
out.
16 or quarterfinals. I know that they definitely get at least one more match beyond the group stages there. Just
it does bear mentioning that even though it is Austin's home stadium, in various it is treated as Monterrey's home stadium, not Austin's, and that will seem weird to people, but that's what happens when you go out against Juarez and Mazatlan.
Right. That, and my question is, will Austin get to use their own locker room? Or
Good
will
question.
that be given to the home team?
That's a real good question.
And I'm
adding that to my list.
Yeah, because I've been in a lot of parts of that stadium, but one part that I've never been in has been the visiting locker room. So we generally don't get access to that. So
maybe we check something else off the box.
Right. All right. So let's see. Anything else that you want to leave us with?
I'll close on the Chick-fil-A thing.
Beautiful.
So when Austin travels to another stadium, their team is still responsible for getting food, and these guys play a match. They just need calories. It doesn't matter. Just junk, just protein, food. The engine needs fuel. So I'm sure that my mentioning, Austin got the players Chick-fil-A might alarm some people who do not eat Chick-fil-A for various very good reasons. Here's the thing. Sometimes they are stuck with whatever options the food contract of the stadium they are visiting allows them. And I feel like the real insult of Wednesday night, Phil, was, all right, loss, red card, yellow card accumulation. Everybody's down. Everybody's pissed off, wants to kick something. All right, guys, we got Chick-fil-A for you. And some of those guys, it was like, literally none of this works for me, but thanks. Anyway, there was a lot of untouched bags of Chick-fil-A still sitting on that table. So there you go. Who knows? Maybe they'll pull my credential for pulling the curtain back so far. Austin FC players, not the biggest fans of Chick-fil-A. You heard it here first.
Yep. We're breaking news all over the place.
Where's Phil? He usually starts this off.
He's teaching in San Antonio today. Colby, go ahead and start us off.